Hello and welcome back to Happily Home Cooking. Today I'm going to be showing you my favorite recipe for making soft, fluffy pita bread at home. This is a recipe I got from Love and Lemons. I will put a link to their recipe in the description. These are my absolute favorite, mostly because they are not tough and dry like a lot of store-bought pita breads that you will find or even try to make. And I think that is really mostly thanks to one secret ingredient, which I will show you as we go through the recipe today. These are definitely a winner, and they are really super easy to make. So even if you don't have any experience baking bread at home, follow along. It's really easy to do, and they are delicious. Plus, these puff up beautifully and make a really great pita pocket sandwich. I will be making some falafels with them this week. So if you would like to see that recipe, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and turn on your notifications because that will be our next video coming out. So come on into the kitchen with me and let's make some homemade pita bread. Alright, so first thing we will start with is 3/4 cup of warm water. We want our water warm, but not steaming hot, so that we will wake up the yeast, but not kill it. And to our water, we'll add 1 teaspoon of granulated sugar. Next, we'll add our active dry yeast. I'm using Red Star. I get this big 2-pound bag of it at Costco. It's a great deal. You could also use the little packets if you like. We are using 1 packet worth, or 2 1/4 teaspoons. Give it a stir. We'll try to dissolve that sugar and yeast as best we can. Don't worry about every little bit being dissolved in there. You're still going to see some little chunks of the yeast up at the top. That's okay. Just get it mostly stirred in. It will be just fine. And then we'll just set this aside and let our yeast wake up while we get our dry ingredients measured out. So in a mixing bowl, we will start with 3 3/4 cups of bread flour. If you don't have bread flour, that's okay. You can substitute all-purpose. I do like using bread flour though. When I have it, it does give breads a nice little bit of extra chew, and it's a subtle texture difference. Next, we'll add in an additional tablespoon of granulated sugar, half a tablespoon of sea salt, and I'm going to pop my mixing bowl onto my mixer along with a dough hook attachment. If you don't have an electric mixer, that is totally okay. You can do this by hand. It'll just take a little extra effort on your part. So I'm going to turn my mixer on low just for a few seconds to get those dry ingredients kind of mixed together. And then we are ready to add in the rest of our wet ingredients, starting with our yeast water. Look at how our yeast has bloomed. It's super foamy up on top now, and it's only been sitting there for about 5 or 10 minutes. If your yeast is not at all foamy on top, your yeast may be dead, and I suggest you start over with some fresh yeast from the beginning. So we'll dump our yeast water into our mixer with our dry ingredients, and next we'll add 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And now our secret ingredient, really the key to having soft, moist, delicious pita breads, we are using plain Greek yogurt. This 3/4 cup of Greek yogurt will make all the difference in the world and give you the most delicious results. Now turn that mixer on low and we're going to start bringing our dough together. And if you're not using an electric mixer, again, no worries, just get yourself a good sturdy wooden spoon and start stirring. Once our dough comes together, we are going to let this either continue mixing or we can knead it by hand for at least 5 to 10 minutes. Now compared to some other bread doughs, this dough does not have a lot of moisture. It's actually pretty stiff. And I feel like it almost strains my mixer motor a little bit because it's so stiff. So I like to do some of the kneading by hand. Before I get my hands into this dough though, I'm going to pour a little bit of olive oil into a large bowl that our dough will rest in when we're all done kneading. So now we'll get our hands in there and finish kneading our dough. And there's really no right or wrong to kneading your dough by hand. Just start squishing it around. You can put it down on your board and start punching it and squishing it around in your hands, and just keep it going again for at least that 5 to 10 minutes of kneading time total. Alright, and once our dough is all kneaded, we are going to place this into our oiled bowl. I'm just going to give it a swirl around and roll it around a few times so that it is coated in the oil so that our dough doesn't dry out. Then we'll cover it up and we'll let this rest at room temperature until it's doubled in size for about 2 hours. And here we are, time warps 2 hours into the future. Let's take a look. Look how beautifully our dough has risen, how much it has puffed up. This looks perfect. So next, before we get our hands back into the dough, I'm going to preheat my oven to 500 degrees. And now on a large cutting board, or just on your countertop if you prefer, we're going to sprinkle some flour just to make sure that our dough doesn't stick. Again, this is not a very sticky dough, but I always like to put a little flour for good measure. Now we'll dump our dough out onto our floured cutting board, and we are going to cut our dough into pieces. Now the original recipe that we are following calls for making 12 pita breads, and that's what I'm doing today. I will tell you though that they are on the smaller side, so if you want a larger pita bread, you might want to make this into maybe 8 pieces instead of 12. Now we'll take each piece of dough and we're going to shape it into a ball. I find the easiest way to do this sometimes is just kind of make a circle between your pointer and thumb and squish that dough up through the hole in your fingers, and voila, nice little dough ball. Now we'll cover our dough balls up. I'm just going to loosely cover them with a piece of plastic wrap, and we'll let them rest another 20 minutes. Once they have rested, we are ready to roll out our pitas. Going to remove the plastic wrap, grab yourself a rolling pin. Again, you can add a little extra flour for dusting to make sure that there's no sticking happening. And we will roll out each of these dough balls into a circle that is approximately 5 inches or so in diameter. In order to get a nice circle shape, I like to just continually turn my dough slightly as I continue rolling. That way it stretches evenly in all directions. Now I'm sure you can do this faster than I do. I like to take my time on this part. This is one of the things about baking that I actually find very relaxing and I enjoy. So go as fast or slow as you want. I'm not in any hurry. I'm going to take my time with this dough. You can see my dough has ended up being about 1/4 inch thick or so. And so once your dough is all rolled out, we are going to place this onto parchment-lined baking sheets. I can fit about 4 pitas per baking sheet. And we're going to bake these 1 sheet at a time for 5 to 8 minutes. All right, batch number 1, in we go. I like to start checking these at around the 5-minute mark. You want to make sure that they are all puffing up somewhat evenly, and we're going to bake these until they are just barely starting to get golden brown on the top. And while one batch is in the oven, I will start rolling out the next batch. So here we are for our 5-minute check. You can see how awesome they are all puffing up. There's barely any golden brown forming at the top, so I'm going to give it just another minute or 2. All right, 1.5 minutes later, perfect. These are getting nice and golden brown on top. They are beautiful. We're going to pull these out and throw our next batch in. And if you were ever concerned about your bread not being fully cooked, go ahead and grab an instant read thermometer. You want it to be at least between 190 and 200 degrees, and you will know that your bread is not doughy in the middle. Look at these beauties. They have puffed up so nicely. They're going to have that nice open pocket space for stuffing with our falafels or any sandwich stuff you want, really. We are going to just transfer these to a cooling rack to let them cool down completely to room temperature. And we'll just keep the pita train moving, continuing with the rest of our batches of pitas. Again, we're doing these in batches of 4, 12 pitas total, 3 batches all together. It really cooks up in no time at all. Last batch coming out. And bam, just like that, we have fresh, delicious, soft, homemade pita bread. I cannot wait to have these with our fresh falafels this week. Again, make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss that recipe. These are also amazing just cut up to dip into some hummus. We even use these as hot dog buns and they're awesome. Top them with a little spicy mayo and kimchi. Delicious. Perfect pocket, soft and fluffy, super easy to make. What more could you ask for? And that is it, my friends. Thanks so much for joining me today for our recipe video on making our favorite soft and fluffy pita bread. And a big thank you to Love and Lemons for sharing this recipe with all of us. I hope now that you've seen just how easy they are to make that you'll try making them yourself at home. When you do, make sure you come back and leave me a comment. Let me know how they turned out for you. Until then, I wish you an amazing day and happy home cooking!